Hey everyone, my name is Chris and welcome to my channel. It is that time of month again for the Just Our Imagination Challenge, but more on that later. Let's begin. DIY number 1. And in this first DIY, we are going to be using a clipboard, and I have this little flexible ruler that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and the width of it is about 1¼ inch. And I am going to draw a line down the long edge of one side. And then I'm just going to use that ruler, work my way all the way up, and draw a line. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use my miter saw, and I'm going to cut the pieces out. And I know it looks like this is still one piece, but they are cut. Those strips are cut out. And I am going to mark in 1½ inch measurements, I believe I did. And these pieces start out measuring 7½ inches long. So I'm going to mark a spot for 6½, 5½, 4½, 3½, 2½, and 1½ inch. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut those out as well. And once I got those cut out, you can see what we are doing. It's very obvious in this picture here. I've got some scrapbook paper. This book I had picked up from Hobby Lobby. I believe I got it either last year or 2 years ago. I think it was last year. And I love this. It's got some very pretty paper in it. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to figure out which sheets of this paper I want to use. And then I am going to trace my little rectangular pieces on there and just cut those out. Now, I know you guys are like, oh wow, she really cut this clipboard up. Well, I wanted to really think outside the box on this one. I mean, I could have taken that clipboard, I could have made it a photo holder, a memo board. I could have done all kinds of things with it in that aspect. But I wanted to be a little more outside the box. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to cut this up. I don't think anybody's going to do this because more than likely you've got some of those paint stir sticks which would work perfectly fine for this project. As a matter of fact, I've actually made one. But I'm just going to use some of this Elmer's school glue, and I'm going to adhere all these little strips of paper onto my wood pieces. And definitely make sure you get to the edges. I tend to focus there. I get little clumps and stuff that I have to wipe away, but hey, I'd rather it stick than have to worry about it not sticking. Oh man, these voiceovers are just driving me crazy. And there's Cammie wanting to get in on the fun of things. And once that glue's had a chance to dry, I'm just going to use this little nail filer and I am going to file off the edges. That wasn't working so well, so I did step it up to my little finger sander, use a little heavier grit sandpaper, and work like a charm. All right, once I get all those sanded, I am just going to set my pieces down, making a tree shape. And the long piece we cut out, if you don't have a spindle like I do, that I'm going to be using as the actual tree trunk, you can actually use this, but I would definitely recommend that you just cut off the end pieces, that little rounded end piece there, just to make it more squared. And then you can definitely use that. You can paint it if you want, do whatever you please, but I've got this very nice looking spindle, and I thought, well, you know what? I love decorating with spindles. It just brings out a little bit of rustic feel, and I love them. So I'm going to first start by flipping all my little pieces over, and I do spread them out. I try to make it as even as possible. Now I'm just going to get an idea where I want the spindle to lay, and then I realize when I flip them all over that using the spindle, it's going to be easier to do it the other way. Now, if I was using that other piece, then setting it on the back side would definitely be the better choice. But I am going to go ahead and flip those pieces back over, and then I'm just going to lay them on top of my spindle. And it was a little bit of a balancing act, but it worked. And I am just going to use some wood glue and some hot glue to adhere those pieces to my spindle. And once I get all those pieces glued on, I'm just going to give it a moment to set up. let that wood glue set up. But I do have this large wood star I got out of a package that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, probably around the 4th of July. And I am going to first paint it with a primer. You can use a white chalk paint. And then I'm going to use this gold color that I got from Paint Couture. I'll link that in the description box. And you can also use this little rusty star. I didn't think it looked right. I just thought it needed a bigger star. But I'm going to take that star, and on the back of it, I'm just going to trace around that top piece just so I know where to put my glue. And I'm just going to use regular hot glue and adhere that to the top. And this project will be done. And like I said in the beginning, this is the Just Our Imagination Challenge. This challenge is co-hosted by Kathy Jo DIYs and Rustic and Lace DIY, with special guest host this month, Craft Classy. And I hope you guys will go and check out the playlist and show these creators some love. They spend so much time creating these videos for you, and I just love this challenge. It's amazing to see what some of these crafters can come up with. And I hope you guys will consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're just popping in from the playlist, I would love to have you as part of my DIY family. And thank you so much to all my current subscribers. I love you guys. But with all that being said, let's continue. DIY number 2. All right, now we're on to wire baskets. So I've got this from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start by folding up the base, the rim of the bottom or top of this wastebasket. I guess it depends on how you look at it. And I just want it to curve upward. And then I'm going to also do the same thing to the top, but not as prominent there, just a little bit. And I am making a bell, and I thought that resembled a bell. Now I'm going to let you know I did this project twice. My second time doing it, I love it. This one's okay. My husband says it looks like one of those hanging bells, and my second one's more of a tabletop bell. But anyway, I've got some sisal rope that I'm going to use to hold the clapper, I guess is what they're called, clapper. I think that's right. But I've got this bell ornament from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take some primer and a little makeup sponge, and I'm just going to dab this bonding primer on there, getting rid of the slick surface so my paint will adhere better. You can probably also use some white chalk paint for that step. And then I've got some metallic gold from from Paint Couture, and I'm going to use a makeup sponge and dab that all over, and I end up doing a couple of coats of each of those products. And when I took the ornament apart, it had this little twist tie holding those little pieces on there, and I just decided to reuse that and thread it through the little, I guess it's like an eye hole where the hanger goes. That way I just have a wider area to thread my sisal rope through. And you can use really any kind of rope for this. And then I'm just going to tie that off as tight as I can get it. And then I'm just going to get an idea of how long I want that to hang down. And now I need to make a hole. So right in the center, I am just going to mark it. And I've got this little tin cup that I thought I was going to use. It makes a little good template to trace the circle so I know where center is and where to cut. But other than that, I don't use it. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out that center with my little tin snips. And then I am going to go ahead and thread my sisal rope through there, and I'm going to tie a knot. And I do tie 2 knots just to make it thicker so it won't slide out of that hole. I do take some hot glue, and I am gluing the knot, adding some glue to the knot just so it doesn't unravel. Then I've got these little silver napkin rings that I am also going to paint the same way I did the bell. Now I'm just going to take some super glue, and I'm going to go around the rim of one of those napkin rings. And then I am going to slide that right over top of that hole, or that knot that we made. And then I'm going to reach down in the bottom. I'm going to trim a little bit more because I figured I needed more space or more surface area for this to adhere to. So I'm going to cut a little bit of the wire, and then I'm just going to bend it into that napkin ring along the edges of it. And you can see right there where I'm just kind of bending them upward, kind of like prongs. And then I'm going to add some glue to the bottom of that knot, and I'm going to pull it back through and just let it sit in there until it dries. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to add some more glue on the inside. Well, I thought I added more glue. Maybe I don't add more glue. And then any of the areas that I see didn't get stuck down with that super glue, I'm going to add a little bit more super glue. Then I'm going to take that other ring and I'm going to place it just like you see here and add some super glue to the contact points. And that's just going to create us a place to put some ribbon through for a hanger. And now I just want to accessorize this. I've got these little sparkly greenery pieces. I can't even remember where I got them from. I want to say it was Walmart, but I'm not 100% sure. But I have been dying to use them, and I thought this would look gorgeous, and it does. They're so pretty. And then I've got some of these little berries, and I just pull them off their picks, and I just glue those down in spots just to give it some color. And then I also do add some little pine pieces and some pine cones. All right, so that was the first one, and you'll see more in the reveal. I wasn't quite happy with it. I spent the whole night looking at it, sitting on my counter. My husband was like, well, if you hang it up, it's going to look more like one of those hanging bells. I was like, well, no, I just didn't like it that much. So I'm going to take another, I happen to have 2 wire baskets, so I'm going to take another one, and I am going to cut the top off completely, or the bottom off completely. And I do use my tin snips. I tried to with my scissors. I was just afraid I was going to ruin my scissors, and these tin snips are awesome. My husband had 2 pairs, so I took 1. All right, and that's what we are going to have. And then I am going to, around where I cut, I'm going to fold those in and downward, as you see what I'm doing right here. And I'm going to do that all the way around. All right, and then once I got those bent over with the pliers, I'm just gonna go ahead and go around it one more time, just kind of rounding it over just a little bit more using my fingers. And then on the opposite end, I am going to shape it upward so it lays a little more flat. And then I've got a pretty thick needle and some bendable wire. And I am going to go all the way around that basket where I cut and folded those pieces over. And I'm going to loop that wire in and out. And this was pretty easy. It took me just a little bit of time. Sometimes my needle didn't want to go through, so I really had to pull it through, or my wire would get a little bent, so I had to straighten it back up. But it works out very well, a lot better than I was thinking it was going to. I wasn't sure at first, but I figured, heck, I've got all this bendable wire, and I've been using the heck out of this bendable wire. I tell you, this has been a great purchase so far. But we're going to go ahead and thread that, like I said, all the way around. And once I get almost to where I meet up to where I started, that's when I'm going to really start pulling that wire and pushing the basket pieces. Oh, it's so hard to explain. We're going to singe this together. It doesn't work quite like it would with just regular needle and thread. You know, you can go all the way around it and then pull on the thread, and it pulls all the fabric together. Well, this, of course, is a little thicker, so we'll have to work with it just a little bit more. And you see, I'll kind of tug on that wire of the basket while I'm pulling the wire of the bendable wire, just kind of trying to pull it. I hope you guys can see what I'm doing. And that top of the can is off of a large can, and I use one of those can openers that prevent the edges from getting sharp, so it kind of folds it a little bit. So that's what I'm going to be using to put on the top of this basket once I get that cinched down to where when I put that top on it, it covers that hole or that opening. So then next I'm just going to secure that wire by twisting it just like you would a twist tie and kind of pulling it at the same time. And you'll see I ended up pulling just a little too hard as I am twisting it and my wire snaps, but I got a few good twists in there, so I'll call it good. All right, and then I just turn it upside down and I got this spindle or piece of wood that I think it's like a table leg, and I'm just using the bottom of that to push that wire where it's flat. Now I've got this piece of paint stir stick, and I want a piece of that cut off that I can lay in the middle of this lid. So I'm just going to use my miter shears, cut a piece off, and then I'm going to take my Crop-A-Dial, and right in the center of that wood piece we cut off, I'm just going to make a hole. And I'm telling you, this thing slices through this like butter. And then I'm going to go ahead and string some jute string through there. I am going to tie a knot, and you only need 1 to 2 knots, depending on, I would try it with 1 knot first, but you're going to want to be able to push that down into the hole, that knot. That way you have as flat of a surface as possible. Cut off that excess twine. I'm going to go ahead and take some masking tape, pull off a piece, put it on the top of that can, and then I'm going to take some hot glue, apply that to my little wood piece, and secure that to that masking tape. It's just going to stick a lot better than trying to stick it on metal surface. So then I'm going to pull that jute or that string through the opening of the basket. I'm pressing that wire onto that cap and just kind of flattening it onto it. That way when I take this hot glue, I'm going to put it around the surface right there where that basket's going to make contact. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take that spindle piece and I'm just going to push those wires into that hot glue. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some more hot glue around that area. And then I have this little cut up or little piece of silicone mat that I'm going to put down in there and push into that hot glue. All right, now we have a way to hold our clapper for our bell. And I'm just going to take this time to just kind of straighten up any bends that may have occurred while I was putting that on there. So I did go ahead and sand right here and I cleaned this off. And I'm going to want it to go right in the center. And you can use anything. You can use any kind of wood. Just whatever floats your boat. You can even use a plunger handle. Toilet plunger handles. You can use one of those if you want. All right, then I'm just going to take some sandpaper and I'm going to sand around the center of that cap or lid just to give me a better way to adhere that. And then I am going to take some Rub and Buff and I am going to go ahead and color in this gold. And because I am such a dope and put it on in the center, I've got to resand the center part. All right. Next, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of these faux looking rusty bells that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. And I am just going to get an idea how long I want them to hang down. And then I am just going to tie them on that piece of rope. And that's what is going to be our clapper. All right, then I'm just going to go ahead and attach my table leg using some super glue and some hot glue. And we're just going to put that right in the center. And then I did just go ahead and make a simple shoestring bow with this ribbon. I got this ribbon from Joann's. But before I attach that ribbon, I'm going to take some fairy lights. Now I've got this little zip tie that I'm just going to go ahead and secure the on and off switch for the fairy lights to the top, inside top of our little dome there. And then I'm just going to take those fairy lights and I'm just going to strand them around the bell. And if you have to, don't be afraid to use a little bit of hot glue in sections. Just don't hot glue where the light bulb is. And it doesn't take much. And then I'm just going to attach my bow with some hot glue, and you'll have to let me know which of the bells was your favorite, number 1 or 2. DIY number 3. All right, it is on to the dreaded pooper scoopers. And this was Brenda's idea. Yes, I called you out, Brenda. This was your idea. Oh man, but I had fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and take these out in the garage. I'm going to spray them with a red glossy paint. You could probably skip that part. I just did it because I'm going to be using a red fabric. In case you were able to see through it, I just wanted to make sure you couldn't tell it was black underneath, if that makes sense. All right, so this is the next day. I had to let that paint dry overnight because it was freezing cold out in the garage. But I've got this little wood burning tool that I've had for quite a while. I've only used it once before, and I don't like this thing because the last time I used it, I dropped it and burned myself. But I'm going to use it because I need to shorten down the handles. And I am just going to go ahead and use this tool to do that. And I am going to go ahead and wear some gloves to protect myself in case I accidentally grab or touch the tip of this, because that sucker is hot. So please be careful if you do ever use one of these. I also suggest that you use a mask or wear a mask when you are doing this on this plastic, because I don't know what kind of fumes or chemicals are being released from that plastic. All right, so once I get those 2 end pieces cut off, you can see how I'm holding it here. I want those pieces as close together, those two, the scooper pieces, as close together as possible. So, and still being able to secure them together. So I just decided this, at least one of them needs to be a little shorter. So I'm just going to cut some more of that handle off of one of them. And this is what I have. I wish I would have gotten it just a little bit closer, but hey, it is what it is. So I've got this red fabric that I've got left over from my Christmas card hanger, I guess is what it was called. I'll link that video in the description box. It was actually on a Just Our Imagination challenge. But anyway, I want to go ahead and cover each end with this fabric. Okay, now this side right here, the deep side, is the side that you want to have the fabric as tight as possible and as smooth as possible. So when you are doing any kind of gluing or tucking and pulling, make sure you do it on the side that is not dented inward, the flat surface side, okay? I hope that makes sense. Hopefully it'll make more sense as we proceed. But this did take a lot of glue. I'm not gonna lie to you. It took some manipulating of my fabric, just, you know, kind of trying to wrap some weird present, really. And I really doubt anybody's gonna try this, but if you do, just be patient with it. And like I said, make sure that the side that is indented inward, make sure that side is the flat side. Okay, so once you've got that done to both of them, what we're going to do here is go ahead and apply some hot glue and just attach those 2 handle pieces together. And then for some extra security, I'm going to take a couple of zip ties and I am just going to zip tie those together as well. Okay, maybe I just use one zip tie. Anywho, they're secured together. It's not going anywhere. All right, so I have another piece of that fabric and I cut it to 9.5 inches by 46 inches. And the 46-inch part is probably just a little too long and I end up trimming it up, but you know, you just never know. I always cut things too long to begin with. All right, what I want to do with this piece is I'm going to put it right down the center. It's going to be the tails to my bow, which is what I have turned these two pooper scoopers into, is a bow. And I'm just going to tie it and drape it and just make it look nice and neat without using any glue, because that way I can use that fabric on something else. All right, and I'm going to set that aside, and I'm just going to grab some of this ribbon. And I love this ribbon, this candy cane color ribbon. But I've got this candy cane wreath form that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take this ribbon and I'm going to wrap it around the wreath form. And I'm not going to get too much into detail here because I'm pretty sure every one of you guys can figure out how to wrap this. But at the ends, I did go ahead and cut a little piece and just kind of glue it and form it around the ends. That way you can't see the wire from the bottom. And then the remainder of it that I wrap around the candy cane, I don't use any glue, but you are more than welcome to use a little bit of dab of glue here and there. I just want to be able to pull as much as I can off of this and be able to reuse it. All right, so the next step in this crazy adventure of pooper scooper crafting is I'm going to go ahead and take a zip tie and I am going to just thread that through the back of the tails that we tied on there. And then I'm just going to zip tie the bow part onto the candy cane wreath form. And then after I spend some time re-straightening out those tails, I realized, well, it's just going to keep shifting around. So I had to apply just a little bit of glue in those spots that you see me do right there. But I used very little. Then I'm just going to go ahead and shape the bottom parts of the tails a little. And then I'm going to grab these fairy lights and I'm going to wrap it around each side of our bow. And I believe I do end up having to use little dabs of hot glue to keep those lights in place. Otherwise, they just kind of scooch all down into one section. So I'll be able to reuse a little bit of this fabric in future projects, but not as much as I was hoping because, you know, I had to make it look semi-decent. And I will say one thing, these pooper scoopers give this bow a nice hard surface to wrap those lights on. And you'll see in the finale, it's actually pretty good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to follow the playlist, see what all these creators who were bold and courageous enough to attempt the Pooper Scooper Challenge see what they came up with. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week. I will have a video coming out next week, and I believe that one is going to be my final Christmas video. And to attach the battery pack to the candy cane, I just took another zip tie and I kind of bunched up the remainder of that cord and just zip tied that in place. And yes, if I want to change the battery out, I either have to try to slide that out of the zip tie or cut the zip tie and then re-zip tie it. But I don't see me using it past one set of batteries, so. But let me know in the comments down below which of these projects was your favorite. And let me know, do you plan on recreating the pooper scooper craft? Oh, every time I say that, it just cracks me up. But you guys, thank you so much for watching. And make sure you stay tuned for the bloopers and real life coming up right after this finale. Okay, but it's gonna need to come down in the center. It's non-stop in this house with these animals. No. No. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is just okay, I'm gonna get a different